So this is the latest version on the drawer front. Side by side, you can see the original is noticeably lighter. It's also just raw wood. There's no protection on it. Whereas the new version does have water-based poly. The main difference in the new version, the bark is intact for the rods. My wife just really likes this look. Although she does also like this as well, but just likes the other version better. Which is good for me because it's less work. I don't need to debark these anymore. And they're no longer different species per drawer. I've picked one. It's all hazelnut. And the lower two drawers do require glue up because they're so tall. So the Peninsula set is going to be 2 standard size drawers at the top and 2 extra large drawers at the bottom. The top is going to be cut from the same plank so that the grain can run continuous. And for the bottom, I'm going to need 3 planks. And I'll need to rip one in half and glue it to the other 2 to make it the correct height. Tops are both exactly 16 inches, so I will cut this a 1/4 inch shorter than that so that when I center the drawer, there's going to be a 1/8 inch gap on both sides for the inset look. I'm cutting the length and ripping the height for both at the same time so that they're exactly the same size. Bottom is 32 3/4, so again, I'm cutting it a 1/4 inch shorter. I picked this one to rip in half. I've played around with the planks in different combinations, and this one seems to be the best in terms of matching the grains. Glue up is finished. Some squeeze out and smudges here and there. That's okay though, once I plane this down. And also when I finish texturing them, it's going to be difficult to spot where they joined up. So even before texturing, it's already kind of hard to tell where the seam is. 1/2 inch thick for the top drawer back faces, and for the bottom 2 it'll be 3/4 inch thick, and it will also be blind dado just like the front. I made this jig for routing the blind dado. So this will sit here, and then it leaves 1/2 inch on the side and 1 inch on the bottom. And this is the stopper for this end. I've already got the correct lines marked on there for the different face lengths. So basically, these edges are what the collar is going to ride against, and I'm using a 1/4 inch straight bit at 1/2 inch deep. Pretty satisfied with the jig. It does make the routing process relatively simpler. I still have to manually square the corners though. So there are the 2 front faces for the bottom drawers, 2 large back faces, the 2 front faces for the upper drawers, and the 1/2 inch backs for those uppers. So here's my cutting plan. This set is coming from this piece. So A, B, C, D, and this is the leftover. These are for the drawer bottoms, by the way. Two larges for the bottom drawers and 2 smalls for the top drawers. Next is the sanding. everything's getting a pass with a 180, and then again with the 320. And before applying the polyurethane, I'm masking the 1/2 inch that will be inserted into the dado. That part is going to get glued, so it can't have any poly on there. I've got the marking gauge set at 1/2 inch, so I just need to run it over once and peel off the remainder. 4 coats of water-based polyurethane. First 2 in clear gloss and 2 more in satin. So the conventional advice for brushing on poly is to apply it in the direction of the grain, but I actually brush them on against the grain first. This has sort of a washboard effect, and I find I can get more poly in between all the peaks and valleys of the wood grain. Once I get full coverage, I will then tip off in the grain direction. Why does everything always require sanding? I don't know, but you have to sand in between the coats. If you skip this, you will see and feel the difference, and you won't like it. Anyways, after sanding, I vacuum and wipe down the dust, and then repeat it 3 more times. Starting the bed assembly, and you'll see why I call it a bed in a sec. First is to fit the bottom into the front face. Then the backs get pre-drilled and then fastened into place. Next is the notching, which is required to accommodate the undermount hardware. And after that is the actual hardware in the form of the front clips, which I'm fastening to both the front face and the drawer bottom. Then I place the drawer on the rails, grab the slides from under, and pull towards the front until it leaves a mark, which I will use to drill down 3/8 of an inch. So ready to get started on the fence. The 2 large straight ones I'm gonna rip in half, and then these are for the sides. So obviously not perfectly straight, like this is no good. So I just keep rotating it until I find the straightest line down the length. So no matter how accurate I am with the cut, because the rod itself is not perfectly straight, it's never going to be truly flat. They are now. And now to cut these to the proper length. In the previous version, the insert depth per side was 1/8. I found that to be not secure enough, so I'm going to double it. Now the rod goes in 1/4 inch into the front face and another 1/4 inch into the back face for a much more secure fit. The next step hasn't changed from before. It's still the most tedious and time-consuming. The priority remains the same, in trying to find the best out of three that look good together in terms of color, pattern, and thickness. And then, of course, transferring the final order and the orientation so that it can be routed out. With that done, the faces are separated so that the next tedious step can begin. I'm cutting out the circle on the inside of the pencil line. The resulting contrast makes it easier for me to guide the router bit, and as long as I stay within the circle during the routing, I know that the fitting will be nice and tight. I didn't do this for the previous version, and it made for a slightly sloppier fitment. So all the side fence are now sorted, traced, and cut out, ready for the router. And once again, using the 1/4 inch straight bit, but this time at a depth of a 1/4 inch instead of 1/8. If I get close to the line, but don't quite hit the mark, I just leave it and move on. I prefer to come back with the chisel later and shave it off manually, rather than doing another pass and risk overshooting the line. And there they are. Routing complete. The texturing process starts with sanding. A few passes with the 120 grit on all the corners and edges to give it a softer profile. This tool is called a restorer, and on it I have a 4-inch wide wire brush. It does the same thing that I was doing with the skinny wire wheel, just a lot faster. I still use the skinny wheel though for the last step, where I give the texturing a little bit more character. After the texturing, it's on to the staining, where I mix 1 part espresso with 5 parts aged wheat and apply them with the chip brush. I leave it on for about 10 minutes and then wipe it off with a paper towel. Next is the top coat. 4 layers again of water-based polyurethane, 3 in clear gloss and 1 in satin. This was sort of tricky with regards to the look I was going for. I wanted a raw, dry, aged look to the wood, and poly has a tendency to make wood look plastic. So I made sure not to over-apply, and then each coat was tipped off with a dry brush, which actually removed a thin layer of poly each time, but I was able to get a decently dry looking top coat. Only thing left is to reassemble everything. So the front faces are getting glued to the bottoms, the clips get secured to the fronts again, and the side trims that were ripped get cut to length and glued to the bottom sides. The rods go back into their proper place, fit the back face, and close out the box. Installing the drawer pulls next. The small and medium-sized drawers get 1 pull per face, and the larger ones get 2 pulls. And finally, it's time for the trim screw. This will make sure that the face is mechanically secured to the bottom if the glue should ever fail, which is highly unlikely, but you never know. So there it is then. Only thing left is to repeat the whole process for the island drawer set. Next episode, I'll be showing the very messy process of floating shelf mounted on a brick wall. Until then, that's about that.